We travel to Osaka, the third largest city in Japan. This city is considered the culinary capital of the country. Here you can find food on every corner. The choice ranges from restaurants with star cuisine to small stands with street food. And somewhere around here you can find ice-cold noodles. We come across this construction in front of a bar which somehow looks like a slide. Owner Masayuki Hiraguchi explains that it has something to do with the noodles.
Traditionally, you would use a slide made of bamboo, but for hygiene reasons, I use fake bamboo made of plastic.
A noodle party on the street with a plastic slide? Sounds weird, and we're curious just how weird it will be. Before the guests arrive, Masayuki checks that the pipes aren't leaking and the water is flowing. Later the noodles will slide down here, but first the master slide maker has to cook them. Right behind the counter, Masayuki cooks classical somen noodles made from wheat or buckwheat flour. But simply serving them in their bowls isn't enough for him.
I've been doing this for 10 years. My guests are happy, and I wanted them to have more than just the classic noodles. A way to cool down in summer.
Once cooked, the noodles go straight into the cold, not simply quenched with cold water. For this noodle party, it has to be ice water. This makes the noodles firmer and gives them the right texture. Cold and slippery. And what does Masayuki serve besides ice cubes?
This is the sauce you eat with the somen noodles. It's made with bonito, seaweed and dashi.
Bonito is a fish, and dashi is a traditional Japanese fish stock. Similar to our vegetable and meat stocks, dashi is the basis for many Japanese dishes. And now, dinner is served. A staff member provides the side dishes. And Masayuki accompanies his guests outside. Up to 10 people can use the slide at the same time. Each person is armed with soup bowls and chopsticks. Here we go. Masayuki sends the noodles down. And don't look, grab them. Each guest has paid €5.50. How many noodles you actually get for this price is also a question of skill. Nevertheless, in the end, everybody has some in their bowl. And how was the noodle party? It's fun. If we all eat together, it's just a good atmosphere. Besides being fun, there's one more piece of good news. Cold noodles have a positive effect on us. When eating our pasta or noodles hot, the starch it contains, a carbohydrate, is converted into smaller sugar units. They're like muscle fuel for us. If we move around a lot, we use up that fuel. But if we sit around most of the time, this fuel doesn't boost our muscles, but the fat layered around our stomach and hips instead. If we eat the noodles cold like you do with the somen in Japan, something else happens in our bodies. When the boiled pasta cools down, it produces a so-called resistant starch. Our digestive enzymes struggle with this starch. They can't convert them into sugar units. Instead, the resistant starch behaves like fiber, for example, like cereals, fruit or vegetables. It enters our colon undigested. On the one hand, that saves us a few calories. On the other hand, this indestructible starch helps our good intestinal bacteria, and they contribute to a strong immune system. So the cold noodles, in moderation, are actually good for us. And then there's the sauce, completely fat-free. Take that, carbonara! Now we want to go at the slide. How many noodles can our editor catch?
Here we go!
Oh, there we go.
Oh! Good? Good? Thank you. Arigato.
It's quite funny, but we haven't really understood it yet. Why do the noodles have to slide? This is something we can't clear up in this bar, because the idea didn't come from Osaka, but from the countryside. So, we set off to the mountainous hinterland about 3/4 of an hour northeast of Kyoto. There are plenty of restaurants here that specialize in sliding noodles. We go to visit one of them. At the entrance, guests are sent directly to the register. €11 per person for 15 minutes of all you can eat, or more precisely, all you can catch. With our ticket and waiting number, we are allowed to enter, or rather go down one flight of stairs. Careful, the floor is wet. The scenery is definitely impressive. But it is pretty crowded. Therefore, the venue is strictly divided. The waiting area is on the lower wooden walkway. Further up are the guests who are next in line. Behind them, people sit and eat at the slides. The restaurant rules are very clear. Unlike these signs in English, very likely translated by a translation software. Order does the neighborhood by the contents of a dish. Please accept it. This, on the other hand, is clear. The numbers 14 to 18 are next in line for the noodle slide. We've got 26. It's gonna be a while. We didn't expect such a crowd. We can't eat yet, but we can check out how the noodle slides work here. On the upper platform, we discover bamboo canes. Flowing through them is fresh ice-cold spring water. And the noodles are actually swimming in it. Just like in the bar in Osaka, the guests have to catch them with their chopsticks, dip them in sauce, and then, of course, eat them. The same principle as in the city, only much bigger and more idyllic. The tradition of nagashi somen, or flowing noodles, comes from a restaurant like this one, built right next to a waterfall in natural surroundings. In 1959, the owner of the restaurant came up with the business idea of using fresh spring water. He directed it through bamboo channels and had the typical Japanese somen noodles flow through them. Fun for guests, both then and now. Finally, we are allowed to enter the upper waiting area. From here, we can scout around for the best tricks to skillfully catch the noodles, especially as they shoot past a lot quicker than on the slide in Osaka. Okay, so hold it a bit diagonally and then just pull it up gently and dip it straight into the sauce. Finally, after almost 2 hours of standing, an employee places us near the end of the channel. That should be some kind of a pole position, right? The noodles are now shooting out of the bamboo canes. Whoops! And here? Well, it's freezing cold. Very refreshing in summer. But the noodles themselves don't really taste of anything. That's what the salty sauce is for. For dessert, we get these green cubes that taste like matcha tea. Simple ingredients and still very popular. It all depends on the presentation. The noodle slides attract tourists and locals alike. The atmosphere is a bit like in a German beer garden.